Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Rockies Daily. I'm your host, Scott Ayers, where we're talking all things Colorado Rockies, folks. And we've got a pretty fun show in store. Just wanted to quickly say thank you so much, as always, for watching. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, continue to share as we grow this thing out. But seriously, appreciate you watching as we quickly approach the start of the season. And let's start today's show with really one of the rising stars for the Colorado Rockies and someone who I think will play a really positive role in this bullpen, and that is Jaden Hill, selected in 2021 out of LSU. He's a righty and moved to the bullpen full-time in 2024. But, one of the things that, we've talked about, is this bullpen is going to be pretty sneaky underrated, or at least it appears that they will be. And they've got some guys who have absolute gas, and Jaden Hill is absolutely one of those guys. He has two pitches, that just will overpower hitters, and that is his sinker, which he tops out at about 98 miles an hour, and his fastball, his four-seam fastball, that tops out at 99 miles per hour. And that fastball he displayed in his first spring training appearance, where it did jump to 99, like I said. Before, it was about 96, 97. Obviously, the work that he's put in the offseason is now reaching 99 miles an hour on that fastball. So for Hill, he obviously has so much power in those two pitches. The sinker having some movement, which is great. And then as well as he also has a slider and changeup that he adds to his mix as well. Slider, he's going to get about 88 miles an hour on that with solid movement. Obviously, slider, the top thing isn't its overall velocity or speed, but that is nice to have. But overall, a really, really nice piece for the Rockies. And a really big year for Hill as he goes into 2026. 2024, obviously, he was just kind of getting his feet wet at the major league level. But in 25, he had a 3.38 ERA, 31 strikeouts, and about 29 innings pitched. And on top of that, he does a great job of being able to create weak contact and creating ground balls. And you even saw that on display in that first appearance against Arizona, where he forced two pop-ups, and then, of course, he strikes out that third batter. So for Hill, he can kind of do it in a lot of different ways, but to have someone that is successful with that sinker pitch is huge because, we've seen early on in this spring training, the Rockies have looked to go to the sinker a little bit more. And Hill obviously coming out of the bullpen, and having pitches. I keep saying pitchers having pitches that can be a lot harder for a batter to face with high speed and movement. Should make him pretty darn successful at Coors Field, because if you want to be successful at Coors, you need to have high velocity. You can't be just throwing meatballs over the middle, but to be able to have solid movement as well, right? You think of, in recent memory, one of the more successful relievers, and someone like Adam Ottavino, who had a slider that was just devastating with its movement. And for Hill, he has a slider, but two pitches that could be really nasty and be very successful at Coors Field. That's really the biggest thing. Some relievers, some pitchers just won't work at Coors just due to their catalog of pitches. Hill has something that actually should work both on the road and at home. So overall, really excited. This is another piece for the Rockies that they just desperately need. They just need to have different young core pieces as they continue to grow this thing, to have someone in the bullpen, actually not just someone, multiple guys in the bullpen that you can feel comfortable with is definitely a big thing and can help moving forward. So just figured Jaden Hill definitely deserved a little recognition, and it felt right just starting the show with him. We move on to this infield, and my oh my, what are we going to make of this infield? We talked about it in the last show, but I just really want to spend more time on these guys because it just feels like a bit of a toss-up of what the Rockies will do. Um, and the good thing is we're seeing strong competition, at least early on. I say strong. There's been some guys performing well early on, and that's noteworthy for sure. Um, and the biggest guy is Kyle Karros as of right now. And if he can continue to play well in the spring, the Rockies' hands are going to be tied. And it's not just if Karros plays well, but Warren Schaefer clearly has high praise for the young third baseman. We've noted some of the things that he's said about Karros, about his potential of being a Gold Glover. He obviously had a lot of positive things to say after Karros' spring game where he notched 3 hits, and really loves, the different power that Karros can bring to the plate, his barrel on the ball, all that. And if he continues to play well, the Rockies then come with a plan of what the heck do we do, because you can't have Karros not playing. And so that's where the benefit of Willie Castro being a utility guy comes in. Because if Karros is, hey, this guy needs to start, Castro goes from being slotted as the third baseman to start the season to starting at second. I don't see Castro really being the starting first baseman. He's a solid enough defender where you'd probably want him somewhere else in the field outside first. And the first base position is a mess. It's as messy as we probably thought it would be. Early spring, guys aren't hitting well, but I just don't really know what to make of the first base position. There isn't a ton of talent there at the moment. And one of the things I'll note in that fourth segment is something along those lines of what the Rockies would want to do if they ever want to make a trade. But besides the point, they can go a couple different ways. Tyler Freeman, I've mentioned a ton. If you watch this show now for a month or so, you have heard me say I would be okay with Tyler Freeman being the guy to start the year at first base. Problem is, he should be returning from his back injury this week, but those things can linger, and there's a real world where that can linger into the season. Maybe not opening day, but it's always a little concerning when you hear that he's dealing with the back in the off season, but hopefully he's okay, because an infield of Freeman, Tovar, Karros, and Castro is pretty solid. Outside of that, though, if they're getting weird, that's where it gets interesting with Rumfield and Julian, and Johnson and company. It just Blaine Krim. That was the fourth name I was thinking of. It just, none of those names feel like surefire guys. I know we've heard in the offseason there's more confidence swirling around someone like Troy Johnson and his ability to play in the outfield, his ability to play first. Charlie Condon as well. I just would like him to probably start at the AAA level. Give him a little bit more time before getting called up. I would also love to have Condon find himself in a spot where he can play a little outfield as well as first, just to have a little bit more versatility. Besides the point, if Condon gets called up and he's got a great bat and he just sits at first for 10 years, great, right? His biggest thing will just be in a solid bat. But overall, the first base position it just feels kind of like an ugly hodgepodge right now. And Freeman, if Karros can't go and he's not the starting third baseman, then you get really weird where maybe Castro gets slotted back to third base. But ultimately and defensively, I mentioned it last show, I really think the Rockies want to go with their best possible defensive infield to prevent some of the mistakes we've already seen early on with some of the throwing errors that they've had. The margin is so thin for this team that you really want to put your best. And if the bats aren't necessarily going well, you want to be strong defensively. Now, the thing is, Karros' bat has been looking really solid. And then finally, obviously, some of those other guys like Ryan Ritter, Adele Amador, those two guys putting pressure and playing really well in the spring is also a really, really great thing for the Rockies, especially for Amador. He's a guy that we've talked about. Just almost feels like he's on his way out. He's kind of clinging on by a thread. If he can continue to show off some power, if he can be productive at the plate, and show that he is still competent at playing at the major league level, that's a big deal for the Rockies in this usage of utility and versatility for the infield. So it's not just, hey, who's starting at second and first, the guys behind them, are they going to be productive? So in case someone like Freeman goes down or Castro goes down or someone like that, are the guys behind them solid enough that when they get the call, they can answer it? So the infield, just continue. I will continue to have my magnifying glass just peeking. Hey, what the hell are we looking at? Overall, though, man, it's just the first base position specifically is it's very interesting, and interestingness is not necessarily the best thing ever. But regardless, I'm excited to talk about it with Trade Machine. But first, let's talk about just Antonio Senzatella really quickly. I felt like I talked about him in the last show, and I just want to give a few more thoughts on Senzatella. And it is a bit of a shame because he's really dealt with some tough injuries. Went from tearing his ACL to having Tommy John in back-to-back years, which is about as bad of a stretch as you can go on if you're a pitcher, because those are two season-ending injuries. And ultimately, I do think there still is an opportunity and a role for him in this bullpen. But also, this is, without a doubt, going to be his last season with the Rockies. I just can't imagine a world where the Rocks are, feel good enough about his play where they want to give him $14 million next year, which is obviously a shame because he's kind of him and Kyle Fran are kind of the last of that old guard from that team that was able to beat the Chicago Cubs and, have some success in the late 2010s. And I think in his first 5 years, he had an under 4 ERA. So he really started out his career. It was either under 4 or under 5 ERA. It's probably more accurate to say under 5, but regardless, he was really, really solid to start his career. And so to see this trajectory is obviously disappointing. He also are disappointed maybe in Bill Schmidt and company. And if not Bill Schmidt, just the former staff. When they traded Nolan Arenado, that to me was a sign that this team was not serious about competing. Even though they said they were not serious about competing. And it just goes back to having a competent front office is really everything. I started this segment talking about Senzatella. I didn't even mean to do this, but seriously, having a competent front office is everything, because if you send out your best player, maybe in franchise history, and you get a lump of coal in return, I mean, maybe it's time to consider making deals for some of these other guys. And I know at the time Senzatella looked like, hey, he could be a strong arm in the starting rotation. But it would have been nice for the front office to at least considering trading some of these arms for better prospects, so we're not in the position that we're in now, right? Like German Marquez and Senzatella, two guys that Marquez especially, a guy that I loved. But you could have gotten so much more value had you at least attempted to make deals. And obviously the loyalty is a big thing in the Rockies and all of that. But winning is more important than loyalty. And loyalty is important because it can help build that trust and everything. And I'm not even saying that there were potential deals for the Rockies to make. They obviously both dealt with injuries. But it just goes to show of what's in store for this front office and how they will need to be able to make moves and not hold on to pieces too long in order for the Rockies to be successful in the future. You have to be thinking of the future. and the front office of old was not. I don't know what they were thinking. They essentially had that monkey with the two cymbals banging, right? That's essentially what the front office of old used to do. But I'm confident in this front office, and I'm confident that Antonio Senzatella will give you some solid innings out of the bullpen this year. Interested to see how he works on pitches like his sinker, which we saw in his first appearance. But ultimately, it is kind of a sad end. If this is the end, I shouldn't say it's a sad end. He's still got a full season. Call me out for that. That's BS, Scott. He could still have a great season in 2026. I think it feels a little like writings on the wall, but I can't count my guy out. All right, so that's on me, folks. 2026, the year of believing in Antonio Senzatella. But regardless, he's got a big year in store to show that he has something left. And if he does pitch well, and in the world that he does pitch well, you look at maybe dealing him at the deadline to try and to get something back in return. Just with that team option looming, I just don't see him making it beyond 2026. Regardless, it's a bit of a rant. I know this show's already going a bit long, but you know what? We got to speak our truths here, and we got to talk about the trade machine. And it's a trade idea, hopefully to send you on your way for this Tuesday, and really more of an exercise to show what the Rockies are kind of able to work with. This isn't necessarily a deal that you do either way, but it at least shows you maybe at the range of what the Rockies are able to deal, as well as, man, maybe they don't necessarily want to give up too much, just because overall value on a lot of these guys are a bit lower. But essentially, one question asked is, what do you do at the first base position? And for this, I looked at across the league. I looked at different guys who've been mentioned in trade rumors, and so I stumbled upon Tristan Casas of the Boston Red Sox. Casas, this is a deal seriously that both teams could say no to, and I would very much understand it. But the idea behind this deal is the Rockies would be able to get someone who in the past has shown a lot of power. He doesn't have much speed, and defensively he's pretty limited, but could provide really solid power. The problem with Casas is he blew out his knee in 2025. So he missed all of 2025. So you're taking a risk on a guy who just had a tough injury, but he's only 26 years old. And his slugging is really solid. In his 2 years prior, slugging over 480. His walk rate was actually decent, but he's obviously going to chase a little bit more because he is a power hitter. He would by far be the best bat of that group of first basemen. But the Rockies will be taking a risk on a guy who now has injury history, and you'd be deciding if it's worth taking a guy who's bouncing back. But I think those are the kind of guys that the Rockies will need to target right now as they continue to build this thing out, because the Rockies farm system isn't on paper right now the strongest. The Rockies' young pieces overall isn't the greatest. They have young pieces, but you make a deal for a first baseman for Colorado if, one, you're really not happy with the group you have, and two, you think Charlie Condon can maybe play a little in the outfield and can work alongside someone like Cassis, or you think, hey, Condon's just not the guy. Those are two reasons why. Now, what the Rockies would need to give up are a couple of names. Ryan Feltner would be the key piece in this deal. Troy Johnston, and maybe a third player like a middle reliever. Ultimately, Boston needs relievers more than they need starting pitching. So that's where maybe Boston isn't really worth converting Feltner from a starting pitcher to a reliever. Reason why the Rockies would trade Feltner over some of their other guys is, one, he is 29 years old, and that isn't to say his career is over by any means. But there isn't any guarantee that he's going to be turning into a superstar anytime soon. I think he's a really solid arm, but in a deal like this, you would have to give up a guy that is competent. And Oh, my microphone went out for a second. Ryan Feltner is that. But again, I don't know if Boston looks at that and says, why would we necessarily do that? But they'd be adding a couple arms with Troy Johnson, who would be able to help fill in at the first base position. It would be an upgrade at first for the Rockies, and the Red Sox would get 2 relievers and some first base support as well. But ultimately, the idea of this trade is just to look at what the Rockies are able to offer. Ryan Feltner feels more of a trade target because there are guys behind him like Dollander, Tanner Gordon, starting pitcher down the road. There's just more potential starting pitching options. And on top of that, the Rockies, with signings that they've made with starting pitchers, Lorenzen, who wants to come here. I'm sorry, my microphone the last couple of days has cut out. We don't like that. I'm going to fix that after the show. But like Michael Lorenzen, that's a big deal. And so maybe that's more of a focus for the Rockies moving forward, going after guys in free agency, which would open up the opportunity to trade some of the guys in their rotation now, like Feltner. So this is getting a little annoying with my microphone. I'm so sorry. We're doing it live, folks. But regardless, you get the idea. I'm going to wrap up the show there and fix this darn microphone. But thank you so much for tuning in. Give me your thoughts on this trade. Let me know. Do you approve? Do you disapprove? Does it make you sick to your stomach? Regardless, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you tomorrow.